I've got Lexi Smith here. So this is our first week of doing Frankly Finance. So we're really excited. We'll be coming to you each week at 11 to talk about different subjects in the finance world. And today we're kicking off with just a little bit about who Lexi and I are, what our background is, and then getting into the different types of services in the financial advice model. So we're going to be going through financial counselling, money coaches, which is a big passion of Lexi and I, and then the financial advice, kind of traditional financial advice and other options that are out there at the moment. So we're really excited to get through this. It's something that Lexi and I talk about all day, every day with different customers and people in the industry. So it's great to really go through that in a lot more detail so people can see all the options that are out there. But I'll throw it over to Lexi to tell us a bit more about your background and how you got to where you are.
Before we do that, do we want to talk about why Frankly Finance? Where did that come from? So Gemma and I are quite frank people. We say it how it is. We're polite, but we like to get to the point and kind of get into it rather than just, I guess you could use the word, fluffing around a little bit. So in terms of my background, so I was a licensed financial advisor for 10 years, which was pretty much identical to Gemma. And I actually found Gemma on Instagram. And I think it was 2021, so 2 years ago now. It's our 2-year anniversary, Gemma. And it was just reaching out to Gemma because I realized that we had such similar backgrounds and we were trying to do such similar things. So moving away from financial advice and into financial coaching. What were your memories of that first time that I sent your message, Gemma?
Well, that was really, really good for me because one, I didn't know anybody else doing it and I thought I was just crazy kind of trying to do this. So that was really good. It was validating, but it was also really good because you and I are very similar. And I think your first message was something around collaboration, not competition. And then we were like, oh, let's have a 15-minute call, just to get to know each other. And I think we spent nearly 2 hours on the phone and then pretty much talked every day ever since. Yeah. So it was really, really good. And it was really validating because somebody else, I knew heaps of advisors were feeling exactly like I was and was keen to be out, but I was really happy to know that somebody else saw my vision for a different path that was still kind of linked to finance. So it was very good. And then we've pretty much just, sent voice notes all day, every day since then.
And it's pretty mind-blowing for me to see the exit from the industry that is financial planning. So we used to have, I think the figure was 28,000 advisors in Australia, and that number dropped off 40% over 5 years. And so there's a lot of different reasons for that. And I know not everyone's reason for leaving is the same, but what would you say was your primary reason, Gemma, for moving out of that role?
So there was a couple, but funny you said that about the stats because I actually Googled it this morning. So in 2020, there was 21,000 advisors and then there's 16,000 today. But I suspect that there's actually a lot less because people like me who are on the financial advice register don't give advice anymore. I don't give face-to-face advice. I work in the digital space. So I would suspect there's heaps of people like that are on the register that are actually not providing advice. So I'd say it's even less, which is scary. But like most advisors would be able to understand, I was feeling really burnt out. I was completely over the red tape and I just felt like I couldn't actually help the customer that was in front of me as much as I wanted to. And I wanted to help more customers, but I didn't know how to do that within the traditional advice model. So I just decided to have a career break. I always thought, I didn't actually know that a financial advisor, there was any other avenue that I was going to be able to work in. I kind of went, you're a financial advisor, you're a manager, you own your practice, that's kind of it. I didn't really know outside that. So I was burnt out. I decided to take a 2-year career break. And then in that time, I kind of was just like, well, what do I actually love about financial advice? What do I miss about it? And it was that hour with the customer, your client, just talking about their everyday lives, the things that worry them, the things that concern them. It wasn't the statement of advice. It was nothing to do with the product. It was definitely not all the research and all of that junk that goes with it. So I was like, imagine if I could just do this, be my casual self, help people with the stuff that they're actually worried about and make a living out of it. And so I was like, oh yeah, that'll just pass the time until I go back into advice when I have to have a real salary and stuff. And then, yeah, people like Lexi and all these doors open, like so many people were feeling exactly the same. And then I discovered digital advice and all these scalable models. And now I don't know, but I don't think I'll ever go back to one-on-one face-to-face advice, which you are exactly the same, right?
Yeah, I am now nearly 3 years into financial coaching after doing financial advice for 10 years. And I think what I'm doing now is actually what I thought that I was initially getting myself into when I decided I wanted to be a financial advisor when I was in year 9 or 10 at school. So I thought it was more about the money management side of things, whereas in reality, it's more about the investments, the super, the insurance. So that's the pathway that I took. That yes, I was good at giving financial advice, but my passion is financial coaching, which I guess that leads into a bit of a discussion on the different people that you can see when you want to talk about money. So most people are really familiar with financial advice. They're not often familiar with the cost of advice though. So we were talking about this earlier to say that the rough stat is that you can't get advice for under $3,000 in Australia, 3,500. But in our experiences, that the advice being provided these days is actually even more expensive than that. What are the figures that you were looking at, Gemma?
Yeah, I was just saying earlier, like obviously we still know a lot of advisors in the industry, and I don't know anybody that is able to give advice for 3,500. Most of the advisors that I am speaking to, they're saying like 5.5, 8 for a standard comprehensive advice plan. And that's, financial advice is so important. You absolutely need comprehensive advice, but it's not something that's affordable to everybody at different points in their life. So there's got to be other options, and people just don't know what they are. I think to your point as well is, yes, people know what financial advice is, but I think they were a lot like you and most advisors probably, that they don't actually realize that the traditional model doesn't really help you with your day-to-day management. It's your insurance. Yeah. And I don't know many customers that are like, hey, it's keeping me up at night because I don't know if I have enough life insurance. It's not. It's their groceries. It's what mortgage rates are going up. It's all of that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, financial advice is so, so important, but there has to be these other pre-advice kind of steps, like we're money coaching and financial coaching.
So one of the reasons why I moved away from financial advice is because I would speak to people in my circle and you could tell they wanted someone to talk to about money, but they're not necessarily in a position, not ready to pay upwards of $3,500 plus for advice, because it wasn't specifically, as we were talking about, that they want advice on their retirement or anything like that. It was that they're wanting to improve their current situation to improve their financial trajectory. And so I wanted to offer a service whereby I could still help these people, but at a much lower cost. And so that's where financial coaching comes in. And financial coaching is quite a new thing in Australia. It's much more popular overseas in the UK and the US. But there's also a third option in Australia that is a little bit more readily available as well, as in more locations, more people offering it, and that is financial counselling. So financial counselling is a free service. So yes, not $3,500, it is totally free, but there's eligibility for access to this. So being on a Centrelink benefit makes you eligible. Not being able to pay a bill or at imminent risk of not being able to pay a bill also makes you eligible. There's also some scope for women experiencing family violence for the purposes of assisting those women to become financially independent, and also for newly arrived migrants. So there's a lot of people though, Gemma, that don't fit into the financial advice model, don't fit into the eligibility criteria for financial counselling. And that is where financial coaching, in my mind, sits, is right in the middle to help those people that aren't at one end or the other end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people don't realize that all these options are available. And yeah, they think that their only option is to go to traditional financial advice. And I know that it's a massive frustration of advisors as well, me included, and the people that refer to me, when you have to turn someone away because you're not in the position that you need to be to get the most out of this or to afford the advice. Yeah, so then there needs to be other avenues, but we absolutely need more coaches. We need more financial advisors. Like, that number is dropping so fast. And given that the new education standards for advisors come in 2025, I would say that number is just going to keep going down, which is pretty scary. But yeah, we need more financial coaches, and we need a bit of a shake up to the traditional advice model, which I know so many advisors are already implementing. Like, they're doing that, like a more of a coaching, a more of a supportive kind of service before that, like nurturing. But I think coaching, you're right, it absolutely sits in that pre-financial advice. Like, imagine when you're back as a financial advisor, like having a customer come to you who's already got all the foundations, all the basics done, they're managing their money really well, they're in a really strong position, like all that hard groundwork's done. So you can do the best financial advice plan in the world, but if they haven't done all of the groundwork for it, you can't stick to a financial plan unless you have the basics covered. So you need to do all of that so you can be in the best position for advice. So it's a bit of a knock-on effect. Like, all of these services that we've talked about, these three models, they complement each other so well. Like, if you're kind of like rock bottom right now, starting from scratch, and you're eligible for counselling, do that first and then move up to seeing a money coach. And then the money coach is getting you in the best position for your financial advice. Like, they all complement each other so well. It's like when you said to me, collaboration over competition, it's exactly that, right? So I love that all these services can work together. The thing is, we just need more of them, and people need to know that they're actual options and how they go about it. Like myself, I didn't even know that counselling, the financial counselling, was so readily available. I knew like Salvos and stuff had a program, but yeah, I didn't really know too much about it, I think, until you really, because you educate people about that quite a bit.
I, as an advisor, had no idea about financial counselling. And so, yeah, there may have been people who I have spoken to over the years that would have been eligible for that. But the conversation was more like, I'm sorry, I can't help you, like, I'll give you a few tips, but this isn't the kind of thing that we do in financial advice. So I think it's really good for advisors to be educated about the different options. And coming the other way as well, like because I also refer to advisors. So there are a certain line that I cannot cross. I can certainly identify times where someone requires advice because of my background, but then I need to refer them on to someone who is currently licensed. So there's pretty much handing this person on a silver platter to a financial advisor.
Yeah, sorry. And you've already explained all the benefit, and you're setting them up knowing, because I always do a lot of work like, yeah, you'll see you might be able to pay $3,500 for the advisor, but I'd be prepared to pay up to you can't quote the fees because you don't know what the strategy is going to be. I just make sure that they're prepared, that there's a real, like, the reality of how much the advice is, but what the value is going to be. So if I was an advisor, I would love to get referrals from people like us, that they're qualified, that they're prepared to actually pay the advice fees, and they're like really in that position. One of the questions that have come through is around, how do you actually find a good coach? And I think it was probably worth talking about finding a good coach and a good financial advisor as well, because like car salesmen and every other industry, there's advisors, there's coaches that one bad egg ruins it for the rest of us. So what would you say, Lexi? What would you recommend? Obviously, you're the best coach, but what would you recommend?
In terms of finding an advisor, I always say to anyone that is in the market for financial advice to find someone that you really gel with, like on a personal level, because it is so important that you can be so open and so honest with this person. The idea is for it to be a long-term relationship, and you want to be in a position whereby you can share exactly how you're feeling and what your vision is and what you want for the future. And Gemma has just disappeared, but that's okay, we will continue. So that's what I always say to everyone, to make sure you find someone that you gel with. And a lot of advisors will be happy to have that 15-minute plus conversation with you to find out, if that gelling can occur. Hello again, Gemma.
Somebody else did it. I think that was Matt. That wasn't me. So carry on.
That's okay.
I 100% agree. You have to gel with somebody. And one of the things that when I was like in my early days as an advisor, I didn't feel like I could say no to clients. Like, the advisor has to gel, like you both have to have a really good relationship, right? So I kind of felt like if a customer was in front of me and we didn't get along and they were looking at being a financial planning client, I was like, I would convince them why I was great and all this stuff. And then I just kind of learnt, as you get, more confident in yourself, you're just like, I don't think I'm the right fit. This isn't a client that I want to be working with. I don't think you can get the best out of me based on how this relationship is. Like, you don't have to be all things for everyone. So you got to meet with a few advisors. You got to meet with a couple of coaches if you don't gel with the first one. Otherwise, you're not going to get everything that you need out of that.
Yeah. And in terms of finding a good coach, there's not many of us around in Australia at the moment. And you definitely, I think, would want someone who is at least familiar with the way things are in Australia in terms of super and insurance and bank accounts and tax and all the rest of it. Even if they won't be giving you advice, they need to understand the setup. So there are very few, but the ones that are out there are very good, all the ones that I know anyway. So again, finding someone that you gel with. They all operate slightly differently as well. So some might be happy to have a one-off meeting. That's something that I do, but other financial coaches will have more of a longer term package. So depending on what you're after as well may impact that. And then in terms of financial counselling, there is the debt helpline, which is available. So for anyone needing that number, it's 1-800 007 007. But there's also, as Gemma mentioned earlier, the Salvation Army also have a very good financial counselling arm. And so there you can jump on Google and type in Salvation Army financial counselling, and you can search for one in your local area. There may be a bit of a wait to see someone though, so take that into account. Don't leave it till you're really, really, really struggling. And the same with advisors and coaches. Sometimes they can have a bit of a wait to be able to have an appointment, given the numbers.
Yeah, I think probably the most important question when you're meeting with a coach or a financial advisor and you're trying to work out if they're a good fit, one is that you build that rapport, like you gel well with, but asking them if your situation, what you want help on, is something that they do a lot of, enjoy, it's kind of like their area, because there's so many different advisors and even coaches that have, like, while we could help with everything, like this is our niche, or this is what we're really passionate about, or this is what we know a lot of, so it can take us like a shorter time to get you that help. Whereas, somebody might be great at mindset, others might be good at daily cash management. You really want to kind of ask them, this is where I feel I am and where I need to get to. Is that something that you're all over? And yeah, same with advisors. Some might be retirement specialists, aged care specialists, accumulators, like your younger audience. So it just really depends. So I think that's an important question.
There is also, I didn't hear that you mentioned it, insurance only advisors out there as well. So that's something that I come across quite often, that someone won't necessarily be in the market for holistic financial advice, but they really need to get their insurances sorted. So financial coaches are also able to give referrals to certain specialist financial advisors as well, if you're just looking for something like that. There's also a comment in the chat as well. Oh no, just a comment. All good. Gemma, what was your question?
Is that Matt apologizing for taking me out of the panel?
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, yeah, on that. So scalable advice is so important. So as we said, like, the advisors are dropping like flies in the industry. So there has to be other solutions for people to get advice. So you can do insurance only advice. You can do digital superannuation advice. You can do robo advice for investments. While we want everybody to have holistic, your comprehensive financial advice, if that's not affordable to you at this point in time, breaking it up and doing the parts that you can afford, still putting together one of the pieces of a financial planning puzzle is better than doing nothing. So you absolutely want to go, right, this is important to me, so I'm going to do this part of it at the moment. So it's not always like 100%. You can do things in your own time as things become important to you. But I think everybody needs a coach in their life, even professional athletes. So me as a financial advisor, I run all my financial decisions past another advisor that I know that he would absolutely get sick of me calling him constantly. But you need to take the emotional decisions out of it. You need to put your investor long-term hat on. So bouncing ideas around someone else, having a money coach that you can just relax with, be yourself, ask questions, it's really, really important. But there is a question in here, Lexi, that I think you should answer. So what is the biggest mental shift that you've had with a client, for example, like a high income earner or something that changed their financial path?
Oh yes, good question. accumulating lots of good stories like this, which is wonderful. So I have a client who is earning good money already, and things were a little tight, you could say. She could have reduced her discretionary expenses and it had been okay, but she wasn't prepared to reduce her discretionary expenses. And that's totally okay. I'm not here to tell anyone what to spend or how much to spend it on or anything like that.
Everybody thinks that will be the solution. When they talk to anyone
Yeah.
about finance, they'll be like, no coffees, no avocado on toast, stay at home, or like, it's not what we
Yeah.
say.
No. So her solution that she decided upon was to simply increase her income. And we always say there is a limit to how much you can reduce your expenses, but there is no limit on what you can earn. And so she went out and she ended up getting another job, and she got a $58,000 pay rise, which meant that she could still spend as she was, but that was, pretty life-changing thing to happen. But she wouldn't have gone and applied for that job if we hadn't have sat down and have that conversation, because we are all creatures of habit and we do things in our comfort zone. So unless that we have a reason not to, we tend to stick with that. In terms of a high income earner who was able to change from week to week, I've seen cases of people earning close to $300,000 a year and still accumulating debt, living week to week, and that really affecting their mental health. We don't have a magic wand that we can wave to fix that. It does take time, but there's also things that come into it, like gambling is something that affects a lot of people, that at the same time as working with a financial coach, they may need to engage other supports as well. So we don't necessarily have all the answers ourselves, but we know where to go to find the extra things that we don't have to be able to support the clients. Would you say that answers that question?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's right. We don't always have the answers, but we can be like, oh, where to from here? And whenever I've got a money coaching client, I always tell them beforehand, I'm like, the solution might be that you're going to pay me for an hour session, and then I'm going to tell you to go to a financial advisor who's going to charge you $8,000. But won't you be glad that you had that reassurance that yes, that's the right path for me, rather than just jumping in and going, oh, I saw one advisor, they said this, and I guess I'll just pay it. Like, it's just giving you that, the validation that that is actually the position that you need to be in. And then, you've done all the other groundwork that we. So I think the mind shift change is huge. Before we wrap up, another question came in that what's the biggest difference in our day being coaches, not advisors? So I work for a digital advice firm. So my day is really, really full with financial advice on a digital scale. And I absolutely love that. But when I was just being a coach, the biggest thing was freedom, although you weren't working from home then. So maybe it would be different. But I'd say just stacks and stacks of paperwork. I don't have to do any of that now, or a compliance person tapping me on the shoulder. Well, I do for the digital, but as a coach. Just like stacks and stacks of paperwork. It's gone. I love it. What about you, Lexi?
Well, that was one of the reasons for my move away from financial advice, was because I felt like I never had time to actually talk to clients because I was too busy with all of the compliance work and the file notes and the statements of advice and all the rest of it. And so, yes, I still do file notes and probably way more admin than I need to do just from my personality, but I have total freedom and I get to have lots of amazing conversations and help so many people, and don't have to leave my home, because I have clients Australia-wide in every state and territory except South Australia. So if you're listening from South Australia and you need a financial coach, you know where to find me. So I think that, pros and cons to everything, but I will personally not be going back to financial advice. And maybe there's even advisors listening who want to try something a little bit different and get into coaching. And maybe we can have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I do really miss it though. Sometimes when a lot of the time when I'm talking to, if it's, someone after a webinar or someone at a barbecue, because I'm always talking finance, or a money coaching client, there's so many times that my brain's just like, oh, I know the perfect strategy. Oh, I know exactly. And I get like really excited. I'm like, oh, you can't, like, you can educate on different things, but I do really miss getting really strategic. And while I didn't ever want to do a statement of advice, I miss like all that. But I know that advisors do it just as well, and I can point customers in the right way. But there's definitely things that I miss about financial advice as well. It's not all bad. It's probably it's much, but we love it. It's a big part of what we do. This is why we're still in the industry. But we just think, well, I'll speak for myself. I just think what we do and the direction that we've gone in this coaching and all of it just complements it so well. So we're friends, not enemies.
Well, that probably brings episode 1 to an end. We will be doing lots of different topics moving forward. But to summarize today, in Australia, you've got 3 different services that you can seek guidance from. So financial counselling if you're really, really struggling, financial coaching if you might earn good money, but you can be doing better, or financial advice if you want advice on super insurance investing or have a very high income and need some, tax advice perhaps. But I hope that you all enjoyed that, and let us know if you have any questions.
Cool. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.